And our final speaker for the evening is Dr. Aossey, who is the president and CEO of the International Medical Corps. She has been in charge of the International Medical Corps since 1986, and she scaled it up from 3 employees to more than 5,300 today, delivering over $1.8 billion in assistance and training to millions of people in 70 countries. The International Medical Corps has responded to every major disaster within the past 30 years, including the Philippines typhoon, the Haiti earthquake, the Indian Ocean tsunami, genocide in Rwanda, and conflicts in Syria, Darfur, Afghanistan, and the Balkans. And they are now very active at the epicenter of the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. Dr. Aossey.
Good evening. Well, I wish I were a doctor. Thank you for that. So let's see, where's the little, oh, it just hit enter? Okay, let me just get in my place. Okay, good evening, everyone. So I just want to give you a quick thought about what's happening in the world today, because International Medical Corps, which is founded right here in Los Angeles, actually, and based right here ever since our founding in 1984 by Dr. Bob Simon, who used to be here at UCLA. I want to tell you that today, right now, when we look back at the last 30 years, we have more what we would call category, or I would say category 3 emergencies now than ever before. We have actually 6 of them. And so if the world feels like it's a little bit on fire, it actually is. And a large part of that is because we have more people displaced now in the world, more than 50 million, than at any time since World War II. Now, when we talk about those emergencies, those Category 3 emergencies, one of them is Ebola. And so I wanted to talk to a little bit about and take you back to Africa, West Africa. It was mentioned earlier in the earlier presentation, why did this particular outbreak spread? And one of the main reasons is that when it broke out in Guinea, it was along a main trading travel route. And the borders are very fluid in West Africa, and so when you look at the 3 countries, there's a lot of travel between Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. And this is one of the reasons why you have such serious spread of it there. And because it had been spreading for some time before it had been properly identified, people were moving around. It was very, very difficult to do any kind of contact tracing. So International Medical Corps is operating in the epicenter in both Liberia and Sierra Leone, which is now kind of considered the ground zero. We opened up a treatment unit in September, and this was through the generosity of USAID's Office of Foreign Disaster Assistance. And we now have about 230 people at that treatment unit doing treatment, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what that entails. We are also about to open up a treatment unit in Sierra Leone, and our goal over the next few months is to operate 2 treatment units in Liberia and 2 in Sierra Leone, and then to also open what we call 2 Ebola universities, one in Sierra Leone and one in Liberia, with a focus on training local health workers. It was mentioned that there's a severe shortage of health workers in West Africa, and as a result of that, we as a training organization are very, very focused on trying to rebuild healthcare infrastructure, but right now we're especially focused on trying to have enough health workers available in West Africa at the source, because the outbreak, as mentioned earlier, is outpacing the current operational efforts on the ground. And so International Medical Corps is working very hard to not only scale up our efforts, but what we would really like to do is help other organizations become operational so that they can help contain it at its source. So we are offering to train other organizations, other healthcare workers, other NGOs. If they are able to open up treatment units, we will train their staff on all the case management protocols around how to treat and contain Ebola. So I'm going to show you a few more photos. As you know, the military, the U.S. military is there and is scaling up as well. This has been really helpful because we are able to get our tests back much more quickly. And so if we send something to the lab and it comes back more quickly, we're able to give a patient a diagnosis, because as you can imagine, they're very anxious to know the results, and we're very anxious to know the results so that we know what kind of treatment to give them. I'm going to show you some of the photos. As I mentioned, in Sierra Leone, where we're about to open up a treatment unit, right now we are doing a lot of training around the kinds of things that the local community needs to know around Ebola. You know, so much of the fear in West Africa is also based on the fact that there's a lot of you know, concern around not knowing about some of the things that they should know about how to avoid it, and how to avoid, you know, some of the things that will, you know, get them in trouble. For instance, it was mentioned earlier, when someone dies, even something as simple as, you know, the burial practices, when someone dies, they are much more contagious shortly after they've died than they are at any other time. And so a lot of the health messaging that we're doing in Sierra Leone comes at a very important time. I'm going to just scroll through a couple photos. There's a heavy emphasis on everywhere we go on disinfecting. This is actually a chlorine wash. This here is our Ebola treatment center. This is in Liberia. And this is, as you can see, the suits that we wear, the personal protection equipment. I'm going to get back to that in a moment, but this is an important photo because it shows that when you bury a body, I mentioned earlier, it's very, very contagious at that point. What we do is we place a body in a bag, we spray it, then we place it in another bag, we spray it again, and then we place it in another bag and we spray it again. And then our health workers who are in the full suits then transport the body to the burial ground, and we spray all the way there and all the way back. So a big part of containing Ebola and operating a treatment unit is from the very beginning, and then if a patient recovers and goes home, that's great, and if they don't, the proper burial of that patient is extremely important toward containing the spread. We do, as we mentioned, a lot of training. We have about 230 people in Liberia alone, and it's a mixture of local staff, and they are very courageous to do the work that they do, our local national Liberian health staff. And then we have expatriates, about 35 of those are people that we send, those courageous health workers that are going there and doing this very heroic work. As you can see, there's a lot of, here you have the boots. We disinfect the boots that our health workers wear, and then we leave them out to air. I wanted to show you this photo because this shows the buddy system. So we have very strict protocols around how we go about treating Ebola, containing it, handling patients, and as I mentioned, around the burial. Another important piece of that is how to put on a suit properly and how to remove one properly as well. So it takes about 30 minutes or so to put one of these suits on. It's about 100 degrees, so it's really, really hot. And when you are in the suit, you can usually only wear it for about 2 hours. You lose about 3 pounds of water. And in fact, when people take the suit off, there is about that much water in their boots from, obviously perspiration. It's extraordinarily difficult work under very, very difficult conditions. And that's when mistakes can happen. And because we don't want mistakes to happen, we have what we call the buddy system, which is that 2 people, they each watch each other get dressed, and then while one is treating an Ebola patient, the other person is watching everything that one health worker is doing. And then they trade off, and the other person treats the Ebola patient, or works with the Ebola patient, and the other worker watches. And this is a very important piece because there's always human error, and when you're working in that kind of heat, under that kind of stress, and under those kind of conditions, it's common that you're going to make some kind of a mistake. This is also what we do when we're taking off the suits. We also are constantly watching each other, and there's a certain protocol to how they are taken off and how they are disinfected. And then we have to get rid of those suits and then get new suits altogether. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about, some of the, real challenges. First of all, there's 3 major challenges in West Africa regarding what it is going to take to try to really turn this around, this outbreak around. As was mentioned before, Ebola can be stopped. It can be stopped at its source. It has repeatedly been stopped at its source over time in the last 30 years. It is containable. It spread because, frankly, it wasn't caught in enough time, and then stopping it becomes harder and harder as it grows exponentially. But we're still within a window that efforts to stop it can still work. So one of the things that we are really focusing on is the importance of getting health workers to West Africa, to Liberia, to Sierra Leone. They're courageous. That expertise is needed. That labor, that help is needed. So needing the staff. The second is there's a worldwide shortage of PPEs, we call them, for the suits. And so we need more of those because we're going through them so quickly. And third, we need financial resources to support those efforts. We really need to scale up the operational efforts on the grounds dramatically to get ahead of this outbreak and to turn it back. So thanks very much. I know my time's up.